How do you create a good resume? I'm sure many of you know there are lots of books written about it. You can search on the internet, and you should. You should look on the internet. You should look at other books. And this is one of the first things I found when I searched on how to write a good resume. This is what Google showed me. And some of this are very subjective. There is no one way to write a good resume. In fact, a lot of times advice is also misleading when somebody tells you to do certain things. For example, the very first thing it says the resume should be 1 page in length. You should only go for 2 pages if you really, really, really believe that it'll add significant value. I don't necessarily believe in that, but there is a reason why they say that. Sometimes I'll show you some examples where people have 4 pages long resumes, and that is really too long. So some of these things are subjective, right? They say 1 page in length. This particular Google suggestion or guideline is coming from purely from a layout perspective. And I'm going to tell you things that are not really written down in books. They're just very simple guidelines that you follow that you can remember. You don't have to really work on it. Okay. The second one, it says clear section headings, and they're all geared towards one thing, communicating more easily. Okay. Ample white space, easy to read font, readable font size, PDF file type. I don't necessarily agree with that. I often get resumes in Word format. Right now, these days, everything can read Word format, so Word format is perfectly fine. So this is what Google produced. There are lots of books. I've seen people sell 40-page books on how to write good resumes and all that. They're not necessary. You can have them, you can go through them by your pleasure, or even if you want to feel a little more confident, you can go through those books, online books or online suggestions. But I'm going to give you some suggestions here that are more universal and enduring. The first thing to think about is, what is the purpose of the resume, right? The resume really is to communicate who you are, what you accomplished, and what you want to do. That's really the 3 main things. So when I look at a resume, I'm looking for those things. When people send me a resume, I want to find out who is this guy or girl, and what have they accomplished, and what do they want to do. So I put these 4 bullet items. Actually, there are only 3 here, but I have 4 bullet items, but there are 3 points to consider. One is communication. As I said, you have to, at a glance, I have to be able to figure out. See, I see lots of resumes come to my desk, and I have to figure out whether you're good enough to shortlist you in about 15 to 20 seconds. I don't have time to spend more time than that to go through each resume. I had to be able to look at a resume at a glance and see, should I put it in the trash can or should I keep it on the desk, right? That's how most people are going to decide. Now, in your case, we're going to try to help you, to hook you up with mentors so that you're going to get a preferential treatment. But yeah, that's not always going to be the case, okay? You want to make sure that the opportunities that you have are more than what we are able to provide, okay? What that means is that your resume is so good that we're just trying to help you, and you shouldn't need my help to get an internship. You want to get to be in that position. You want to be in a very strong position so that you get internships and job offers without any help from anybody. You should be that strong. So communicate who you are. The purpose of the resume is to communicate very easily at a glance. One of the other things most people forget is that typically most human beings, when we talk for half an hour, you can only remember about 4 or 5 things at the end of the conversation. If I keep telling you to do 10 different things, you're not going to remember easily unless you take down notes and you create a checklist and you go through those checklists. But if I just tell you 2 or 3 things, you won't have to take down notes. You remember that. And the same thing happens when I look at a resume. I can only remember 3 or 4 things from a resume. So you want to make sure that you take that opportunity for highlighting those 3 or 4 things that I can remember, the most important things that are important to you, that is about you. The second thing is be truthful. Does anybody know who George Santos is? You guys have heard of that, right? That name? George Santos, the guy from the guy in the New York representative, the guy who got elected with false resume, right? So he'll catch up to you. I've seen people who lie on their resume and it'll automatically be a disqualification. The lie could be a very simple lie. You might say, I'll actually have an example later on. I'll show you where he didn't realize that I was very familiar with the project and he's put his name on that project. And I know he did not work on that project. That would be an automatic disqualification. So don't always be truthful on your resume. Show what you actually did and accomplished. If you worked on a project, then say what you did instead of just describing the project. I'll walk through a few examples of what I mean by that. When you list coursework, and I know many of you don't have project experience because you're still students, and so it's okay to list coursework, but only list relevant coursework and how you did in those courses. How did it help you? Did you really enjoy those courses? Things like that relevant to the coursework. If you're there's no harm in putting the coursework that you worked on. Okay. The last thing I pointed out here is not really about resume, but a pointer that resume takes a long time to build. It's not just about writing a piece of paper or a document. It's about building a resume. In other words, you build that experience and you just list that experience that you get on your resume. That's what makes you. Do you understand these 3 points? So if you remember these 3 points, you'll be able to write a good resume. Right? Communication, be truthful, and list what you actually accomplished. So here are some of the problems I see with resumes that I get. I've seen some of your resumes as well, and some of you might recognize the points I'm raising here. The first one I see often with new graduates is a long narrative. I don't want to hear the Ramayana, Mahabharata. I want a very succinct or clear, crisp list of things that you accomplished. Okay, don't write a long, it doesn't have to be a life story. In 30 seconds, right, we're walking we're standing in an elevator. You got about 15 to 30 seconds. Tell me about yourself. And your resume has to be as good as that. Tell me who you are, what you accomplished, and what you're looking for. The other problem I see from fresh graduates is a laundry list of coursework. I list all the courses. I don't want to know about all the courses that you took. Most people don't have the time to dig into that. Remember, the resume is a means for you to get the foot in the door. It's basically to get you shortlisted, and then they will call you to drill into that. At that point, you have an opportunity to talk about and discuss each project that the employer might be interested in. 10th class grades are no longer relevant. I mean, especially after graduating in the 3rd year and 4th year, I don't care about 10th class grades. Most people don't go look for those. They look at what you accomplished in the last 5 years. Similarly, IIT rank. And recently, somebody told me he's got about 15 years of experience, and he was telling me about his IIT rank. And it's irrelevant. After 5 years, IIT rank is relevant. And same thing with PhD. I tell people, if you say, where do you get your PhD? I say, it's irrelevant. After 10 years, it doesn't matter. If somebody has to talk about their IIT rank or their 10th class grades, then I'll give you a job or internship that is appropriate to a high school graduate. Or if somebody says, I did my PhD at blah, 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 and he has 10 years experience, I'm going to ignore his 10 years experience and will give him a job provided he's eligible that is appropriate to somebody who just finished a PhD. Okay. I can show you some of my resume. In fact, I don't know if you looked at my LinkedIn profile. I usually don't go beyond about 10 years in my career. It's not important. What you accomplished then is not important at all. I mean, to some extent, it makes you. So your already is defined by what you accomplish later on. So don't worry if your grades are not that great, but also don't try to emphasize those grades in 10th class grades. Spelling errors and typos. I see this a lot. Typos to some extent are acceptable because people have dyslexia and you have typos. It's pretty common to see typos. But these days, there's no excuse for typos either because there are great tools on the internet. Word document editors are very good at catching typos. Spelling errors are really bad. Right? It means that you don't care and you're not present. You're communicating a bad image if you have spelling errors. The other problem I see is long resumes, too many accomplishments. If you really have a lot of accomplishments, you don't need a resume. I tell people who approach me that, hey, I've been working for 30 years. If you're asking me for my resume, then you probably, it's not a good fit for me. And it's the same thing. If you have a lot of accomplishments, you don't really need a resume. People will come to you. Okay. So a good sign that your resume is too long and you're listing too many things, you need to cut it down is the fact that you have to create a resume. That's a good sign. It does not have to be a life story. Right? Nobody wants to read your, if you want to write a story about yourself, that's an autobiography. It'll be good to write a book, but it doesn't belong in the resume. Some of these things, as I said, it's the way we hire, and I've been fairly successful at hiring. I've hired at all levels, all the way from high school interns as well to executive level positions. So they are subjective. You will hear different opinions, but most of the time you do hear people complaining about the items that I listed here. And I'll go through some examples for you. Okay, let's see. Do you see this example here? It's actually a real resume that I received a while back, and I changed the names. And do you see what is wrong here? It's very hard for me to get from this person. I had to read this narrative, right? This is going to take me more than 15 seconds to figure out what this person did. He has highlighted these sections. He's followed some of these recommendations to highlight sections, but I don't know when he did this. And this is in fact the guy who claimed, is this the person here? Okay, so here he says, manage and lead the design and architecture of a cross-platform mobile apps and services for dynamic retail POS. Oh, this was one. Okay, so he put this one here, and this is actually good. He was actually able to say, can you see what I'm highlighting there? Increase production availability to advertisers from 98.3% to 99.5%. Okay, this is an accomplishment. It's really very clearly measurable, and I can verify this. Okay, the problem I see here, he didn't put a date here, so I don't know when he did this. And the other problem is that I know this person's name doesn't match with the person who was working on this project. Okay, so this is an example of, although if it was true, it would have been a good way to list his accomplishment, provided he put a date here. But because I know this project, I know that it's not true. And you have to be careful, because if you don't put if you're not truthful on your resume, somebody or the other sooner or later will catch you. Okay, so this I call not very well laid out resume. In addition to not being well laid out, it also doesn't capture the information that I'm looking for. When did he work as a engineering architect? When did he work in Xbox? When did he work in Bing Ads? I need to know all of these, because if I want to, for instance, cross-check with other references, I should be able to do that easily. So that is one example. Here's another one. Here's another example of what I call a bad resume. And the reason I consider this a bad resume is it just says, if you look at the resume, it's fairly long. It's got a lot of experience, but he just says his interest, he just wants to be a software design and development. It's not very clear what he wants to do. Or it's somebody with so much experience, if he can't tell me what he wants to do, that's a bad sign to me. Okay. And even here, under each section on the experience, he does put the date, which is good. But if you look at this, it says SharePoint, min role, deployment, performance improvements. That is not an accomplishment. It has to be very clearly measurable. Right? It has to be able to tell me, can I verify that he actually did that? What did he accomplish there? Okay, those are important. And to me, this doesn't give me any information on what he actually accomplished in that role. So that's another bad example. I'll give you a good example. Unfortunately, this one, I only got a piece of that. I just got the front page, first page. Now, this is a little long, but still, it was okay because he's trying to tell me what he is, and he's an experienced person. And he lists the university, he lists the grade point average, all of that, which is good. And this is highlighted version here, worked as a member of Bing Ash backend development. Even though overall the resume was good, this particular item I didn't like as much because, again, I cannot determine what he worked on, what did he accomplish in that role. And when you try to focus on the accomplishments, your resume naturally becomes short and brief, and you tend to focus on what is important. I'll give you a few more examples of more specific. Okay, so here's an example. In one of the resumes, I found a bullet point that says, working on linear regression model of capacity utilization. Why is that bad? Can anybody tell me why that is bad? Likita?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, see, Likita, okay. Can you tell me why this is bad?
He's just telling about the continuation process, sir. I mean, like, he didn't accomplish anything. He's
That's right.
working on.
It doesn't show what he accomplished. A good way to put this is a real accomplishment. So it actually says, I developed a linear regression model for capacity utilization. It says he actually finished it. And it says the result, how we measured it, is enabled us to predict capacity with 5% accuracy. So that's a very good accomplishment to list. And you end it there. That's sufficient. Now, if you want to know more about it, I will talk to you during the interview. There's another one. All these I pulled up from some existing resumes. Led sales and marketing team of ACME Corp. Okay, this is not a real company, but this is what he listed in his resume. Led sales and marketing team of ACME Corp. It doesn't mean anything to me. Okay, even if you said led sales and marketing team of 100 people, it still doesn't mean anything to me. I want to see something like this. Led the sales and marketing teams to grow annual revenues from $10 million to $70 million in 18 months. Now that is an accomplishment. This is not an accomplishment. This is just your title. You're just put in that position. This is an accomplishment. Another example, involved in planning and budget allocation activities. This is very light on substance. I have no idea what you actually did and what was your involvement, what did you accomplish. This is an accomplishment. You planned and managed the budget for a team of 3 contract developers. Final cost came within 5% of planned budget. And that is an accomplishment. Now, even if you said the final cost came we missed the final cost by 50% or 100%, that is still an accomplishment. What it tells me is that you're paying attention to how good your planning and management of budget was. Even though it was bad, you're learning something in the process. And we give credit to people. We actually care about people who do that and acknowledge failure rather than people who just say this, involved in planning and budget. Whereas if you said, let's say this one says, planned and managed the budget for a team of 3 contract developers, unfortunately, we had cost overruns of more than 100%. Right? It meant that the project didn't go very well as planned, but the person learned from it, and that we care about. So it's okay to call out failures. There's another example. Somebody lists the courses taken, everything, okay, whatever courses that they've taken. English as a second language, Sanskrit as a third language. I'm just making this up. We don't want to see that. It depends on the job that you're applying to. Suppose you're applying to as a translator in embassy, for instance. then languages are important. I don't care about C++ programming or discrete math and all that. But if you're applying for a software engineering position, then I want to see the languages, programming languages, that courses that you're taken. But more than that, I also want to see how you did. Did you like the courses that you take? Right? This is what I want to see. For example, if you're applying for a data science position, I want to see relevant coursework, statistical inference. What was your grade there? How did you do? And you can add more, a few more sentences here, for instance, to say, I worked on this project and this is the reason I liked it. It was very successful, for instance. Artificial neural networks, grade A. I worked on a project to do character recognition, and my error and precision on a machine that we ran this project was 98%. Precision recall was 98 and 99%. You list that along with this coursework that you did. That is also useful because we understand you don't have enough experience and you are depending more on the coursework for your resume.